Um, Hi guys, this is Michael Finocchiaro on the AI Across the Product Lifecycle podcast. I'm joined by two amazing entrepreneurs, Michael Rosam of Quix and Sebastian Völkl of Dalus. They're going to explain what they're doing, and we're going to talk about, as usual, AI and how it's impacting their success and helping their customers. So I don't know, Michael, you want to start?
Yeah, hey, Michael, good to be here. Thanks for having us. Yeah, so I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Quix. We are 5 years old, just over, actually getting close to 6 now. We're based in the UK, although and we focus on test data management. So we came out of the McLaren Formula One team. In 2020, we built a data platform. It's used by F1 teams and other industrial organizations, mainly in Europe. We help our clients to collect up all of their test data, all the measurement data, all the configuration data from physical and virtual tests and consolidate it into a single source of truth, which obviously accelerates analytics, validation, verification, and enables things like machine learning and AI.
Very cool. And Sebastian, can you tell us about your parkour and about Dallas?
Sure, yeah. Nice to meet you guys. I'm calling in here from California, San Francisco. Originally from Germany, but my co-founder and I met in the US and then moved the company to the US, and we're in the journey about 2 years now, so a little less. But yeah, we are building Dalus, which is basically a modern model-based system engineering software. And model-based system engineering can include a lot of things, but the core pillars we're focusing on is kind of like requirements management, system architecture, and simulation, and combining these in kind of like one environment. And we are mostly used by companies building complex hardware systems. So this can include aerospace defense, but also robotics, automotive, etc. But those are the two industries we just like see used the most.
How big are your teams? I forgot to ask these to some of the other startups. How big are your two teams respectively?
We're around 20 people.
That's pretty good size. Well, then it's 5 years old. So that's great. And how about you, Sebastian?
Yeah, we're still setting out. We have a few interns here and there, but it's mostly just still me and my co-founder in the early stages.
That's awesome. So we usually, the title of the podcast is AI Across the Product Lifecycle, and I like to get an idea of what's happening in the real world in AI by asking amazing startups like you guys that are using it in the trenches every day. I usually start by saying, AI, of course, has existed for several decades in some form or another, but we all lived through this revolution in 2023 with the advent of LLMs and ChatGPT. And it would be nice to know whether the two of you, when that happened, when we've suddenly had this open AI stuff that we had never heard of before, were you guys really bullish about it? Did you say like this is going to change everything, or maybe you were a bit, well, let's see, because it could just be a fluff and maybe it's just going to fade out? What were you guys? What was your guys' opinion back 2-3 years ago when this whole revolution started? Either of you can pick that one up. Go for it.
Well, yeah, super bullish. As soon as I first tried it, you could just see what it could do. It was unbelievable. So very bullish. I don't think that's the common view though. In my team, I have 3 co-founders, and it's taken a bit of time for everybody to warm up to it. But now it's like another level. The things that we're doing internally with AI to develop our product is like really everybody's on board. That it's a game changer.
And did you see it as a game changer for everything, for the development process, as well as the actual products you could build now that you couldn't build before?
I think it's taken a lot longer to see where it could impact the end user and the product. That's coming now, though. We understand that. In terms of like an internal accelerator, for us, it's been, very huge. That came quite quickly, that it was helping engineers to build software faster. It's helping people in product and marketing to like analyze lots of customer calls and interviews faster. So it's really, I would say it started internally, and now it's I guess, to an extent as well, the user base is catching up. So it's what they can do with it is also catching up.
Is that were you also really bullish on it, Sebastian?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like one of the things when you live in San Francisco is like there's like nothing else to talk about, right? That's like the only topic, which can be good or bad depending on how you see it. But yeah, it's like you go outside the door here and you go in a cafe and there's like 80% of the people in the cafe building an AI startup right now. So it's like you're certainly living in a bubble, and it's kind of like, or we don't know if it's a bubble, but like it's certainly like everybody's doing it here. And once you go outside the city, once I go back to like maybe Germany and I talk to my friends and whatever, like I say, oh, actually, like no one knows about the latest whatever model that just got released 2 days ago. There's like there's like different worlds.
They're not
But I
following
think
Nikos then, right? Because
yeah, like
Nikos
I
tells us
think
every day that every model comes out.
But that's, I would say, one of the benefits. Like I think I see kind of like on a daily basis how it is implemented in like a lot of industries, how it can like all these companies that are growing here kind of like changing how different industries work and changing like kind of like overcoming these kind of like adoption barriers that has been there for like 2 years, 1 or 2 years. And especially in like I think if you're talking about like AI, like engineering and specifically more like hardware engineering, because like sometimes in like the software engineering world, I mean, it's clearly there already, right? Like it's obvious, even if you talk to the best engineers in the world in the software industry, it's like, okay, they're all making use of the AI tools to kind of like help like accelerate their work. But if you talk to most of the industries outside of that, that's just not there yet. So it's just like, okay, when will these other jobs or like industries catch up to the software engineering world, because they're just like natively adopted this first. And by a fact, like hardware is just always moving slower, including like the software for hardware. So it's kind of like just how long does it need to catch up? But it will for sure come. It's just like a question of like
Yeah,
when. So
very cool. And so obviously you guys are building pretty amazing products, and we want to learn a little bit about those. And what's really interesting too is to sort of separate the hype from the reality in terms of how your developers on your teams are using AI to build these awesome applications. How is it just in the scaffolding? Is it also building test data? Is it, what kinds of ways are you using it, and the developers using it on a daily basis to build Dalus and Quix respectively?
Well, we're a software platform, so obviously most of my 20 staff are software engineers of some sort, and so they're using it every day to build the product. I think it's just literally using Claude CLI mainly actually over here. So I think there's been quite a lot of iteration with different tools. We've been using Cursor, we've been using
Windsurf.
yeah, exactly, Windsurf, you name it. And in the end, people just love having the Claude Code CLI in your CLI working with you. And I think it's taken a bit of time for engineers to get a workflow and how it works best. But there's been a lot of sharing and collaboration amongst the team about how to get the best out of it for specific use cases. And now we couldn't be without it. I mean, I'm basically like you can look at the credit consumption of Claude CLI, and you can see who's really nailing it, and you can see who's maybe not quite. And it's almost like performance review time. It's like who's burnt the most Claude credit. Well, because I mean, I posted on LinkedIn recently. We were deploying to an enterprise account which had zero trust requirements, and we had to build something basically to help us deploy our software. And the engineers built that in a couple of weeks, and it was tens of thousands of lines of code. It's probably a whole business in its own right, building this solution to help us deploy our software. And an engineer just built it on his own in like 7 days. It's insane. So yeah, it's really cool.
Cool. Okay. Well, Sebastian, you're in the heart of the whole thing. So you're going to give us like, what's the latest, coolest tool,
yeah.
right? Probably you're going to tell us, Claude, that is so 2025, man.
Yeah, actually, I moved apartment like about a year ago, but before I lived, there was like one block away from where the people started Cursor and where the Cursor office
Wow.
is.
Very
So,
cool.
talking about everything is like so close to each other. But we know the people who founded Cursor, and we met them, and yeah, it's a very great team, and I think a great product. That's what we use mostly at our company, and yeah, I mean, I can underline the things Michael was saying, and in our case, there's situations where we have maybe potential, maybe it's sometimes like a smaller thing, even like a smaller feature, like a smaller bug, whatever, um, that we learn about in the morning, and in the afternoon we come back to the customer and say, it's like not live, like you can go back in and like we implemented it, and like something like that just wouldn't be possible like a few years ago. So and also we were trying to make use of that, right? Like I think over one of the conversations we are probably having, or like you're having a lot, is like, oh, like there's these like big enterprises and engineering tools, and there's like these startups coming up. Like, oh, how can you win as a startup? Well, it's like making use of these tools, because like the enterprises usually have a hard time of like bringing these tools in a company, letting everybody adopt to it. Which tool should we use? Which model? Is this fine? Like, can we trust it? And I think as a startup, you can just like move fast and like, try it out on a daily basis. And I think we can take this to our advantage. And that's certainly what we do. So we can move fast and like build things really quickly, implement things quickly, get feedback. And AI just really helps with product development on that side.
I would guess that it also makes you more competitive with respect to the big three, because you're a lot more agile, right? I mean,
Yeah.
people are still
Yeah.
waiting for these companies to come out with GA agentic stuff, because everything's still in beta, and you guys are like on top of that, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the work we do, so like data platform, our customers are stuck between a bit of a rock and a hard place, right? The rock is those big three you mentioned. You can go to Siemens or Dassault. You can get a data platform, but they're pretty rigid. They don't really bend to your internal workflows as an R&D organization. And by the way, every R&D organization has got different workflows, so that means like most customers are dissatisfied. And they're kind of like vendor locked data schemas and things like that. On the other side, you can build yourself, right? So that's the rock and the hard place. On the other side, you can build yourself. So you get your internal IT team, or maybe you go to a software house and they build you a custom solution. But AI and Quix are coming right in the middle, because with AI, you can build custom solutions like so fast that it's like having a vendor. It's like having a vendor kind of backed production ready data platform that you can completely customize in a matter of kind of like weeks or months. Whereas literally you're into years and years of customization. If you go with any of those two options, you're either 2 years in a build out of a DIY solution, or 2 years in a digital transformation program with a big heavy vendor software. But now, like, Quix is a framework really for building your test data platform. So the framework plus AI means you get a custom solution in a fraction of the time. That's a completely game-changing value proposition for any
Absolutely.
organization that is doing research and development and engineering and needs to manage data.
Very cool. Have you had a similar experience, Sebastian?
Yeah, I mean, pretty similar boat. Maybe it might be even a bit tricky. It's like, I think when it comes to like testing data, everybody's pretty much aligned that like we should do it. It makes a lot of sense in the system engineering and MBSE world. Some people are still trying to understand what's even the whole idea of that and like the purpose of that. So it's kind of like it's like, I think a lot of like experimentation even needed on a product side of like, how should things work, how should things look. So we have the benefit of just like trying out things really quickly, seeing what works with customers and what doesn't, and then just like implementing those things. And I think in respect to like the bigger vendors, they just like push things for like 30 years, and like now everything is there, but like there's so much there that like you don't even know what you want to use in that, and that creates all of this complications. And I think we can focus on the easy things, the basic things that are the right things, and then it makes it way more intuitive. And again, coming back to this, like quickly kind of like adopting new changes, quickly listening to the customer, and getting rid of things. Sometimes we just like get things out of the tool again because we see, oh, that's actually not really useful. So that is also part of that whole like ideation and process of like
And
pushing
like
things out, seeing what
factorization as
works.
well, and like factorizing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's actually a question, a comment. Vedant Joshi said, Great convo. Guys, I believe that the biggest challenge right now is whether to do stuff by AI or do stuff for AI. Not sure where to go with that, and it's not really a question, but it's an interesting proposition. It makes me want to ask you guys, like, are you guys using AI in the product from a user interface point of view, or from a plumbing point of view, or maybe a combination of the two? Is it more of an agentic idea, or more just advanced machine learning? I mean, how is it actually being used in Dalus, for example?
Yeah, there's like multiple ways. We have a lot of ways of non-agentic ways to work with AI in our software. So, talking about extracting data out of documents into the software, right? Like which usually has been a very like manual process, or even with like if you did like a more deterministic whatever export before, that usually like left out a few things, and the latest LLMs are just like pretty good at these kinds of tasks. So these are kind of like non-agentic ways of using AI, is like getting data out of like maybe more documents into the platform. I think we also have like an interface for users to basically, the way I always phrase it is like, if you view like the model as like one big chunk of data, right? Like your requirements and your architecture and your simulation data and whatever, all of this is to some degree just like a big chunk of like data that is like very machine readable. Sometimes it's very hard for a human to read all of that, right? So being able to just like query the database through like an LLM and being able to retrieve information is it sounds simple, but like having this in one place and get context is a big thing. And then in our platform, we have ways to kind of like manipulate the data with the AI. And that's kind of like where it's more like the agentic process, right? So we can add, delete, change requirements by prompting it, or by uploading documents and telling it to do things, or creating the system architecture automatically based on existing requirements, or creating certain types of like, Python scripts based on your architecture and your requirements, right? So all of this is kind of like part of like more manipulating the data. But that's what I'm saying. There's like non-agentic ways you can actually make use of AI. There's agentic ways of using AI, but like we are for sure trying to again, coming back to this, we're just trying to see what works the best, and then leaving the things that people actually use and get benefit from, and getting rid of those things that where it might not be the best use case for it. But that's how we do it at our company.
Anything to add, Michael?
Yeah, no, that's really cool. We deal a lot with data movement, so we have to build data integrations. As I mentioned before, every organization you go to has got different systems in place for testing, for simulation, for everything really. And so what you'll find is lots of custom integrations to get data in and out of the platform. So we built an agentic workflow which helps the engineer building the integration to build a custom integration from a base. What it really does is it embeds our domain expertise as software engineers working on industrial data systems into an AI agent to build the connection. And so you can just get it done and it normally returns a result which is working within like a few minutes. So that's taking kind of days or more, maybe weeks of human effort to make an integration, write the code, and just
and all the trial and error that entails, right? And all the trial and error that entails.
That down into no time at all. So that's one example. Another one which is coming up is like querying. So engineers often want to ask specific questions of like very large data sets, and that is a complicated thing to do today. So I was with one of my ex-colleagues at McLaren Automotive this week, and he was saying how when we were developing a program, it was a high-performance vehicle program, and the key attribute was lap time at Nürburgring. They were designing like some suspension components, and they wanted to ask basic questions like, has a certain model of a McLaren car ever bottomed out around the Nürburgring? Answering that question is really difficult today, because you have to go and get all the test data sessions you've ever run, look at them, make some queries on each one, and figure out, what the ride heights were and things like that. But what we're hopeful for, what we're looking at is, well, that will just become a natural language query, and the engineer will have what would have taken weeks of analyzing historical data will take seconds to pull a result, which just lets the organization, the team, move forward with, setting even design requirements. It's back to the kind of like the requirement definition of Sebastian, because it's always full loop. It's a closed circle. You develop your requirements, you develop and test your systems, and then you go back to your requirements and validate them, and you might have to go around that many times. And in that is always like data-driven questions, which are actually today very hard to answer.
That makes me wonder, like, are you guys training your own LLMs on your own specialities, or you're just using I know Leo AI, he created an LMM malware. It calls it the large mechanical model, where he put all this mechanical engineering knowledge into an LLM. So you guys are saying, no, you're not training your own data. It's more just having an agent that has a RAG that has all that knowledge in the RAG, basically, right? More or less.
Yeah, for us, no, we're not. I mean, our data is not our data; it's our customers' data, so it's so incredibly sensitive. In fact, like most of our customers host our product on their own infrastructure, so we actually never even see their data. So no, that is not. That's not within scope, I don't think. But asking the data questions, developing systems, that is kind of where we're looking at.
Yeah, same. We thought about it, but I think we came to the conclusion that like when you again, I would love to train a custom model based on the very unique data, I guess, that's been put in our platform, but we can't do that, so that's not an option. I think my opinion is that like if you actually wanna do your own custom model, you would like pick the latest, even from the OpenAI models, whatever, fine tune that, and like even if that's slightly better than whatever state of the art model, you wait 3 months, like you spend like I don't know how many thousands of dollars on creating this custom model, and like you spend how many months of giving it data and whatever, and then even like 3 or 6 months later, the latest lab releases a
Quint 3
new
or whatever.
whatever model, and that will be better than your custom fine-tuned trained model. So it's kind of like all the work was like useless. And I think that's kind of like just what we need to expect from those models to get better, and kind of like that fine-tuning or creating your own custom model just makes sense if you can actually have access to non-public data and are able to train on that. I think that's the only way of actually having a better, fine-tuned custom model. Again, in our case, we're not allowed to that. We are not doing that. We don't make use of any of customer data. In other industries, you might be able to do it, but that's kind of like the way, at least I think about it.
No, that makes a lot of sense, actually. It's just I remember that one of Mauer's comments was he said the problem with these LLMs is they're trained on Reddit, and Reddit isn't exactly an engineering repository, That being said, there's I've looked at a lot of the frameworks that the big three and other vendors are using to describe AI and the phases, and one that I thought was really good was Aora Barry of PTC has this framework of advise, assist, and automate. So advise is basically bring the data together and answer a question. Assist is, okay, maybe give the user 3 or 4 options, then before you do an action by the agent, there's a human in the loop. And then, of course, automate is where there's a whole workflow that is 100% AI. There's just a human, maybe 10 steps later, or after it's been iterated 10 times, there's a human oversight. So where are you guys in that? Are you guys still at the advise? Are you doing some stuff with assist? Or maybe there's some things you found where you can actually automate more, 1 to n steps of a workflow?
Yeah, I mean, the connectors is it does automate it, but you always end up with the code. AI, as we're seeing, is a really great accelerator for an expert. So I don't think you would ever currently wouldn't want to say, hey, develop me a brake system for my new car and let it just do the job. Like, you need to be an expert in brake control systems.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to review the code and you need to understand what it does. I think it's more of an accelerator. It's an assistive technology.
More on an advise, and then maybe assist for like one task or something.
Yeah.
Is that the
There's
same for
some
you,
things that
Sebastian?
you could automate, but it would have to be like non-safety critical systems, obviously. And
You're right.
yeah,
Same for you, Sebastian? About the same?
Yeah, I think one of the unique jobs of a system engineer is to be a kind of like, you know, he can be a subject matter expert in maybe, one way, but like one of the unique things about the job of system engineer is to really understand a lot of things a little bit,
The
right?
architecture.
Like if he's working on a complex system and not on just one subsystem, but he needs to make sense of like all the different subsystems, how they're connected to each other, understand what the requirements mean. So what we see, on the advice side is really kind of like, oh, like they can really understand like the general system better if we're on the topics, even where they're not subject matter experts. And we do see, I mean, we publish demos about that, but like being able to keep a process where you keep the human in a loop, but so kind of like send the AI kind of like to the front and be like, can you try to figure this out? And you kind of like see what it comes back with, and then you look over it and you're like, does this make sense? Yes or no? Right? So there's use flow. Like sometimes people come up with use cases and present them to me, and I'm surprised because I couldn't even think about doing that myself. But people are kind of like looking at oh, there's like a requirement failing, right? And in our tool, like everything is connected with each other. So you could trace back to like, oh, ask the model of like, why is this requirement failing? And it could show you, oh, because there's certain restrictions it has, and it points you back to an analysis. And in analysis, there was like in a Python script, there was like a calculation that kind of like was kind of like poorly performed. It was like wrong, and it would like trace all of this back and be like, yeah, like maybe you should change this. And you can be like, not like blindly say yes. You should always be like, oh, like, this actually makes sense. But it kind of like, it can help you get to this point faster. Um, so there's a lot of like use cases where it can go beyond just like the advice. It can actually like do things for you. But as Mike said, like I'm not trying to push for a, hey, just like let the AI do everything, just like trust, like just accept everything without looking over it. Like I disagree with this strongly. Like I keep saying people like sometimes you don't even want to use it at all for like super mission critical things. Like actually try to use your brain to think about certain
Hmm.
problems and things, and like not try to offload everything to AI. Like so it really depends on the use case, but it certainly can be very powerful.
It is that sort of an intellectual trap, right? Every time it tells you how brilliant you are and would you like me to do this other thing, you're kind of delegating even more of your own life to these tools, right? Um, it also makes, like, I was thinking about these things and thinking that ultimately what we don't want an agent, we want agents plural, right? Like maybe I was even thinking there could be a Maimonides agent who's just basically trained to say, I don't believe you, prove it, because how are you guys getting around that particular aspect? Was the most annoying aspect in our very deterministic engineering world is hallucinations and probability, right? Because these are probabilistic engines and not deterministic ones. So in your two worlds, which you demand you an enormous amount of precision, right? Whether that's the testing or the model-based systems engineering, how are you guys working around this issue of hallucination and the probabilistic nature of AI in a very deterministic engineering world? Maybe a long question, sorry, but maybe it needs to think about. But I think
well,
it's
I
still
think
a relevant one because I think that's where a lot of people get stumbling on the AI thing. Well, I don't understand how I can use it in a deterministic way.
I think that's where the expertise comes in. So you're basically creating a workflow with the agent that does a job, and when you have expertise in that job to be done, then you're able to basically craft the workflow and understand whether it's being done right or not. I often make a sort of very simple analogy. Well, I'm not a natural writer, but I do post on LinkedIn. Now, if I ask an AI to create me a LinkedIn post, it's not very good. I actually write most of mine myself. But I've got colleagues in content marketing, and they're very expert in writing, and so they're able to get a much better result out of an AI when they say, "Hey, create a LinkedIn post," because they're just putting so much extra workflow. There's like control parameters and steps and do this and then that, and it all comes from their domain expertise in writing. So it's the same for engineering. If you have domain expertise in an area of engineering, you can basically create a skill, if you like, or
prompt
a
engineering.
workflow. Yeah, a workflow that's gonna work for you. And so it takes quite a lot of time to tweak your workflows, but you can get to a good place.
Is that the same way you're doing it, Sebastian?
Yeah, I mean, a few obvious things like, should input, should output, right? Like if you try that's kind of like what you said, right? But like if you give bad prompts, if you give bad, questions, whatever, like you will not really kind of like get great results, or it doesn't have a lot of context on your system or whatever. When it comes to like multi-agent processes, I think yes, that's kind of like where the future is kind of like leading towards, and it's like you as a user are more like an orchestra of like trying to like navigate these different maybe agents, different directions. But yeah, again, like it's like a lot of things where you might not actually want to use them, and makes make more sense to like do things yourself. The one thing that's maybe more particular, like is kind of like, okay, what are the things where you kind of like already know how the end result should look like, but it would just take you a long time to manually come to this result, right? In our case, a lot of this in the system engineering world is kind of like coming up with like the system architecture and like creating this, and like the state of the art, unfortunately, is like you go to someone who has like an engineering degree, like a system engineering degree, like works as a system engineer, and look over the shoulder, and like he's just like working on these like more like legacy tools, and he's like spending 70% of him making these like block diagrams and like whatever, and he's like, oh, is that a respool? Is that like, is this time spent like wisely? And you would probably say no. Like he should probably more like making decisions and making like different kind of like trade studies or whatever, right? Like that's like an engineering task, not creating like 70% of time these like block diagrams. And I think that's where like let's try to use AI to like automate these like processes and steps that are actually like everybody, or like they already know what they want, but like it just takes them a long time to get there. That's where I see like used, where it can actually be helpful, where you can actually trust the output, or you can look over it. And then over time, you can maybe, you can create like 10, 20, 30 at the same time, and you just look over them and you accept which version is kind of like the best one, right? Like you run all of these like simultaneously. So you have like more kind of like data, so to say, to look at. But yeah, step by step.
That made me think that it might be a bit ironic then, because the more that we use AI, the more we'll be able to give those mundane tasks to the AI, and that'll give us more time to innovate. But since we've spent all that time doing those mundane tasks, will we be able to switch over to the innovation things? Because we're so used to doing the main stuff. Do you think that there'll be an aha moment in engineering where all that mundane stuff is delegated to an AI, and now I can really become this creative engineer rather than someone that's just doing the plumbing 70% of the time, as you said?
I guess that's the optimism of any technology revolution, right? They all free us up to do higher value things. So yeah, I suppose that's the direction of travel. It's the same when something like a washing machine was invented. People were washing clothes with their bare hands and spending all day doing that, and now they don't. They're free to do something else. So yes, we should be abstracted off of mundane day-to-day admin. I mean, we must all be experiencing that already. I certainly am. There's just a lot of stuff that you would do on a day-to-day basis that you don't have to do anymore, and you just pass that over and you spend your time, high value work.
Oh, do you feel you're already doing that today? That you're already being able to focus on the higher value stuff?
Yeah, just on the desktop, as day-to-day business, there's lots of things where you would have to review documents or do review analysis, and you can, some of that you can pass off, and you can just get summaries back. It's very powerful.
Do you have that same experience, Sebastian?
Yeah, I mean, might sound harsh, but I think that's kind of like make or break companies over the next next, maybe not like 6 to 12 months, but like 2 to 3+ years, right? Like you always see it in the, like, if I talk about it from like a customer perspective, like, AI adoption in like, smaller companies and startups and more like innovative companies versus like bigger enterprises and slow moving organizations that are obviously like taking longer, and you just see the direct impact this has. So I think that's more like a culture question, like a company culture question, like how it has been, like, how does leadership decide to like implement it, right? Like there's some CEOs, even of big enterprises, that like, what do they want? Do they try to speed it up and be like, oh, now everybody uses AI in our company, or is it like the CEO of that company doesn't really trust it? It's like, oh, like, no, like, let's wait for it, like, but I think like, waiting for it, and like, I obviously talk to companies who like they don't allow any AI in their organization, right? Sometimes it's like security issues, but like sometimes it's like about other topics, and I think like that just sounds like they're getting overrun by like even like small organizations in the next 2 years. So I think it's an important time to, like, as a if I would be like a leader in like a bigger organization, it's like try to make it very practical and not just like have consultants come in and have fancy slides that talk about this AI thing, like that. Sure, that make you feel good, but this doesn't gonna change any processes in your organization. So you need to like one of the best ways I've seen it actually implemented is spinning up like a lab environment, spinning up an R&D environment where you can actually test new processes, tools really quickly, and like see if this works for you or not before you even try to adopt it within a big organization. I've seen that working very well. So you can actually like have like a 2 to 3 months period of testing out new tools and whatever in your smaller version of your organization, and then bring that up to leadership and say, we got these benefits out of it, and I think we should do this for our whole organization now. So that's something I've seen working pretty well for even like bigger organization to the adoption.
Sarah Varakumar asked, with the rapid adoption of AI across industries, how do you see the role of CAD and PLM professionals evolving, and what skills? Yeah, this is a question actually I was going to ask you guys. What should the next generation of engineers be looking at to stay relevant in this new, agentic future that we're heading towards? Because a lot of these entry-level engineering jobs will be agents doing it. So how do engineers stay relevant? How do they? I mean, of course, there's the argument that when we went from horses to cars, there were more engineers in jobs, even if the horse rider, the guys driving the horses, didn't have much job. But how do you guys see that happening? What would your advice be to the people of 10, 15, 20 years younger that are just coming, trying to be thinking about being engineers?
Yeah, well, focus on the fundamentals. I mean, first principles engineering, I think, is the most important. So you learn these deep skills. Maybe you're going to go deeper into some of the fundamentals of physics and applied engineering physics. Learn coding alongside. I mean, lots of engineers are doing this anyway, but you can really turbocharge yourself these days with like fundamental knowledge. Actually, I was talking to a young engineer recently at Warwick University, and he was talking about the old T model, and the top he's focusing on computer science and down into deep into physics, and I think that's about right, because at the end of the day, AI is more or less a computer science and data science paradigm, and then you've got the physics. The intersection of that is very, very powerful. The big unlock for AI is it will stop you doing all the admin. I remember I was a mechanical engineer myself, and would spend some time developing a part, sometime kind of doing some structural FEA testing on it. Most of the time you would be doing administrative things like reviewing drawings, kind of managing part versions in bill of material systems, making sure that the person in the cost engineering team understands what you're designing and how they're going to cost it, talking to purchasing, talking to your suppliers. Like, most of my time was not spent engineering vehicles. So really, AI should take a lot of that away and let you focus on where you add the most value.
And for Sebastian, must be even a more relevant question for all these kids in San Francisco, right? With the do I just become an AI guy and work for the next startup bubble, or do I stick with being an engineer, right?
Yeah, see, I don't think, I think specifically in the like if you're actually like an engineer, like try to be I I agree with the idea of like learn the basics, become good at your job. Like let's say CAD, for example. Sure, there might be like a CAD assisted AI here and there, but that doesn't mean if you're now a grad or like you're an engineer, it's like, oh, should I learn to do CAD? And I was like, yes, like you should become good at it, and like before you even think about using AI for it, and then like you can think about like how it can assist your work. So I think maybe this conversation might be different in 5 years from now, but like for the next few years, you're good if you're actually good at working in whatever CAD tool and like designing it. I do very much agree with the idea of like learning the basics of like software engineering. Like that doesn't need to mean you need to be an expert in software engineering as well, but getting the basics so you can actually build that's like the unique time we're in, right? You can actually build your own internal tools really quickly if you want to, or you can build your own whatever you need to have as a very unique, instead of going to us or going to any tool vendor, maybe you can just build a plugin yourself. Maybe you can build a whatever thing yourself to assist your personal workflow with software. And hopefully it's not, that's the term that's being used of like vibe coded, which I kind of like don't really like, because for me this assumes you don't have the basic understanding of software and you just kind of like prompted to generate code and you don't understand it, and this will lead to issues sooner or later. So yeah, getting the basics done and kind of like learning a bit of software on the side, I think is something helpful. But become good at your craft. I think one of the unique things in like engineering or like hardware engineering is like it's way more of like a craft you need to like be an expert in, and like I don't know, in finance where you need to like work in Excel sheets every day, and like it's very like what is your actual like what actually do you need to be good at, and so like data wrangling or whatever. But like in a lot of the hardware engineering tasks, and like be good at your craft and like be good at that before you think about using AI, and then you can do it.
It makes me think that really it's maybe in terms of software engineering, it's more like the DevOps stack, because that's really the key, right? Is it you understand the minimum of DevOps, and how do you get software from an idea to an actually running software is one thing that we weren't taught in engineering school. At least I wasn't taught, 40 years ago. I didn't even know that. Well, it didn't even exist back then, but the acronym didn't exist. So this is awesome. Just to close out this section before we talk a little bit broader about the customers you work with, how has your opinion of AI changed from the bullish beginnings of 2023, and now we're heading towards 2026? Has your opinion of it changed? Has it become more nuanced, or are there things where you're like, AI will continue to do this, and other places, like you were just saying, Sebastian, maybe this conversation expires in 3 or 4 years, because by then we're going to be moved to some other place with it. I'm just wondering where you guys, what was your opinion now in late 2025 about it?
Still very bullish. It's moved beyond like experimentation. People are using it every day, although we're still also learning how to work with it for lots of different use cases and workflows. I think some things work well, others less, and no, it's only going to get better. I think it's already like just a familiar companion. I've got the app running on my desktop all the time. You're dipping into it constantly. There's other workflows that you can run automatically. So really, it's just there as a companion to my life now. So more bullish on it than ever.
Great. How about you, Sebastian? I guess you don't have
Yeah.
much of a choice sitting where you're sitting, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think about not using it. I think everybody was like surprised by it. Like, there's no, if you could have actually predicted it, you would be a billionaire right now if you invested in the right stocks, or whatever. So I think no one actually predicted the right outcomes. I think it was interesting how fast it overcame this period of hallucination. I think, 3 years back, like it was like really bad and like it hallucinated a lot. And he was like, oh, like, will this actually be like useful? And like now you go to like the latest state of the art models and you're like, oh, like, sure, like I trust you like a lot. And hopefully you can give me the right sources if I ask you for it. So it overcame this period really quickly. Let's see how the the one ask I have for the AI industry is to build better open source models. That's kind of like my model. Like, we have this at our company as well. We need to like do on-premise deployments as well, and kind of like can't use the closed source model obviously because of that. There's just like a certain quality reduction we currently are seeing between using our AI and our software with like any of the closed source models or like the open source models. And so I'm always like hoping for better open source models to be released that are kind of like getting to at least similar results or even better results. But I think that's just a timing. Again, there's nothing that speaks against it from a physics perspective, whatever. Like it's just a timing and a resolve thing. And so yeah, this will continue to improve. Probably not as radical as it has been. Like we're certainly trying to like not see a curve
The
that
hype
goes
curve,
linear or
right?
exponential, but it will be like a more like a curve that like slows down a little bit over time because we basically used all of the data available. It's just like all the latest models are just trained on additional like artificially created testing data, right? So it's kind of like, we already used up all of our resources when it comes to training data on the internet. So how do you get more testing data? It's like a lot of interesting startups here in San Francisco that are kind of like, building these kind of like job platforms to interview experts to gather additional data, right? That's like the next $1 billion companies built here are kind of like just the companies creating testing data for these labs. So that's a very interesting new wave of startups here in SF, or just like, creating expert testing data so the models get better over time. So it will be slower, but it will certainly always get better.
So in the last part of the conversation, I like to talk a little bit about your experiences putting your software into the real world, because companies are relatively reluctant to talk about where they are because they might not look at if they're very modern. Like you even said, some companies don't even allow AI inside their company. I usually think of data maturity on a spectrum of 1 to 5. Like 1, they're still using Excel and email. 5, it's fully agentic, adaptive digital twins are completely not autonomous. Like basically nobody's at 5, or maybe somebody might be at 4.1, but there's probably like one company like that in the entire planet, whereas everybody else, depending on what industry you're in, is somewhere between 1 and 3 probably. So first part of the question is, do you agree? Do you that we definitely still are on this a very relatively low data maturity, despite the fact that we've got technology that could enable a much higher level? And the second part of the question is, when you put in Dalus or you put in Quix, is there a bit of an aha moment? Does customers say, well, if I actually fixed all my data governance problems, I would get so much more out of this tool. It'd be just so much more amazing. And so the implementation of a Dalus or a Quix becomes a catalyst for change and a catalyst for transformation of the company into something far more digitally mature.
Yeah, I mean, we're selling to like enterprise size engineering companies in Europe, and the data maturity is somewhere around 1, and maybe between 0 and 1. It's like the state of the art is files in folders, and those file folder systems will be everywhere across the whole organization. So test data. I mean, you imagine an organization with a couple of hundred, maybe, engineers working in Simulink and MATLAB, and what they're doing whenever they press run or save is saving the data onto their local hard drive.
Really? There's
Yeah, of course.
no repositories?
Test campaigns with cars going around tracks, and the results being CSV emailed to people, and then sometime later being uploaded into a repository somewhere. I think it really strikes me, because I've also worked quite a lot in let's call it the modern data stack, where people talk about CRM, sales data, business intelligence data, and this whole ecosystem is so incredibly mature. And there's like lots of companies at 4 or 5 where the data flows. It's in like Snowflake or Databricks. They've got their BI stack. They've got analysts and data engineers building data transformation pipelines, and the reports are all available, and it's like really good. But when you come to engineering, where I find the data in engineering is so valuable and could unlock so much potential, it's just so behind. And the good news is that companies are really investing in it at the moment. So there's a lot of initiatives. There's a lot of challenges to be solved. It's really hard. Data's not easy. It's really hard domain to get your data right, to get it integrated, to get it cleaned, to have it like reliable data pipelines, have data quality, have data governance. This is really big challenge, especially when you're coming from so far behind. But companies are trying to catch up now, which is why we are where we're at, and growing very quickly now.
Have you had that same experience, Sebastian, with Dalus?
Yeah, maybe it's slightly better, but similar. Yeah, I think we have the chance to work with a lot of like fast moving, also like smaller organizations and startups and scale ups, and they're usually from a organization perspective a bit more modern than like the enterprises. But again, coming back to like what's the current state of the art in system engineering is, if you have like traditional system engineering, which is document based and model based, right? It's still like 90% plus is kind of like document based system engineering in these organizations. If that's in Excel, or if it's again like information lying around and like dozens of, I don't know, diagrams and requirement sheets and testing data, whatever, is like still very document based. So a big challenge is like how do you make this transition happening without needing to spend millions of dollars to hire 50 people to come into your org and do this? Like, how can you make use of like maybe automated ways of transferring this data to like other platforms and making use of that? But so I think it's more like a maybe like 0 to like a 1 to 2 instead of 0 to 1. But that's kind of like still like very document based. Basically, very few organizations that are actually like doing any middle based things in the system engineering division.
But when they bring in Dalus, does that change? Is there because you guys are putting turning all that into data, right?
Yeah, one of there's very few quantitative results in the system engineering world when it comes to adopting MBSE. Like there's like a few case studies released here and there over the last 20 years, but nothing really usable, or like very few things that are usable. So one of the first things we start doing is like when we get into organizations, we really create a plan of like, okay, what are the actual like results you want to achieve in terms of like quantifying them? What are the metrics we want to track over the next 3 months, and have like qualitative surveys. And after the 3 months, we kind of like come back and see, how many early issues did we detect? Because now we switched over from this document base. How faster does it now take me to get to certain results and information? How does everybody feel? And we kind of like see. I hope we can release all of these kind of like soon, like more publicly. Right now, all of this is still in the works, and more like in the works, and we can't really talk about it yet. But I think when we get out of that will be like that will be the most amount of data points the system engineering world has probably seen in terms of results over the last 30 years. Because there's like, again, nothing really there yet, but I think we can release those soon. And I think that's kind of like what I would love to do. I want to like, I'm a big like, I want to see actual like results. I want to see the metrics. How much does it actually save the organization? How much does it, how much less cost do they have, et cetera, by adopting MBSE instead of like, yeah, we are doing MBSE now, and like, no one actually like knows what this means. And it's like, if you have at least have metrics and results, you can like you have a very good reasoning for doing it. And that's kind of like where I'm trying to get to.
Very cool. Well, we're almost out of time, and I've really loved this conversation. It's been really fascinating. I've learned a lot. Thank you, guys. Do you think we'll still have this conversation in 2 or 3 years? Or do you think this is the entire game is going to change? I mean, where do you think? What's your crystal ball say on what's engineering like? Because it seems like it changes every 3 to 6 months now. But if you were to look at the crystal ball, where do you think we're going to be in the next 2 to 3 years? Other than you guys are both unicorns, you're doing exit with billions of dollars. But other than that, right?
Yeah, well, the hope is more data-driven, isn't it? More automation, supporting more engineers to do their jobs. I think it's going to take a long time to fix the data, and we know data is the lifeblood of AI. So it's going to take a large number of years to just fix the data layer. And then in parallel, of course, all the models are coming along, and you will find specific physics-based models, and then they can be plugged into the data warehouses that engineering organizations are developing in order to accelerate R&D. So no, I'm still bullish. I think it's going to take longer in R&D than in engineering than we expect, but it's coming.
Yeah, maybe we, I don't know, 5 years we can press the button and the finished product comes out at the end, right? But maybe this will take some more time.
Well, maybe I should phrase the question differently. You guys are both startups, and we still have 18 to 20 billion dollars that are going to 3 companies and not to the other 360 I've identified. So does that change? Is there a shift where small, SMBs and even large enterprises are looking to startups of various sizes to solve specific problems that that the big 3 cannot solve? Do you think that there's a shift there? There's a transformation? Or do you think the big 3 just buys everybody and we're just back to the big 3 again?
I mean, one of the fears is, I guess AI can accelerate the monopolistic tendencies of markets, I believe. If you look at like Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, they dominate the clouds market, right? There's no opportunity for anybody to come and compete with them. They own the distribution channel to the clients. So, if somebody who's a customer of Azure wants AI, they get Copilot. And, as already being the market, dominating the market, then they just get to reinforce and entrench their position. And of course, they've got the resources to go and invest in that as well. So no, startups have a big fight, but what we do have on our side is agility. We have the ability to go into niche areas where they might be underserved. And we also have the ability to do what's right for our customers and not just what's right or not just what fits our product and our services, and that we try and impart on our customers because we've got the strongest voice in the room. So because a startup, we come from a perspective as we understand what customers do and don't want, and we're trying to help them get what they do want. It's not what's currently available on the market, and then they have a choice. So the only other really challenge is making more customers aware that there's a new choice on the market, and that's where we put all of our effort. So it's all about channel partnerships, distribution, messaging, marketing, podcasts. Here we are. Yeah.
How about you, Sebastian?
Yeah, I think I mean, pick your market segment and try to win that, right? Like I think trying to be specific, like it does make sense for me right now to go to in the US to the defense primes and like convince them to get away from those big to ours. Like that doesn't work, at least for now. But that's not our goal. I think our goal is to like go with the small organizations that are moving fast. And if I can pick an example here. Like even if you look at like who are the companies that are even winning in these contracts right now, like it's the even going away from like tool vendors to like the industry, and you stay in like that's like a new upcoming small organization but more fast moving organization, build better products than one of the primes. Apparently that's why they're winning more contracts, right? What they would love to go with a more modern kind of like tool vendor than with like the enterprise. Yeah, probably. So every head-to-head, let's say, fight against kind of like in the small fast-moving organizations, we win against the bigger tool vendors. But that's kind of like what we're also trying to focus on and trying to provide values. I think it's important for like startup and like whatever, pick your pick whatever you think you're the best to like win in, and kind of like not try to win everything, because that's like not possible. And let the others get the rest of the market, where obviously like a lot of money is made in. But like, let's see how this changes over the next 5 years. Will they still make so much money in 5 years than today? So that's kind of like the bets on our side, is to move with the winners of our customer segment markets on respectively.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to thank you guys very much for taking your time and joining the podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it too.
Yeah, it's been great.
Oh yeah,
Thanks a lot for having
thanks
us,
for the
Michael.
invite.
And it was really awesome talking to both of you guys. And we'll be back next week. We have Thready and Up to Parts and a couple other really awesome startups. I think I'm also trying to propel both the CTO and the CEO. So stay tuned for more. Again, a big thanks to Sebastian and to Michael. Best of luck with Quix and Dalus. And we'll be back with another podcast. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay.